Welcome to Podcast Time. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Rachel, and I'm joined today by my good friend, Nick. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing great, Rachel. I'm really excited about today's topic because it's something every English learner has to deal with, no matter where they are in the world.
That's right. Today, we're talking about how to talk about yourself. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But when someone says, "So, tell me a little bit about yourself," many people just freeze.
Oh, I've been there. Even in my own language, sometimes I don't know where to start. Do I talk about my job? My cat? What I had for breakfast? It's hard to know what the other person wants to hear.
Exactly. And for English learners, there is the added pressure of finding the right words and the right grammar. But the good news is that talking about yourself is like a skill. You can practice it and have a template ready in your mind.
I love that idea of a template. It's like having a little map for the conversation. So, if we're meeting someone for the first time, maybe at a party or a casual meetup, what's the first thing we usually share after our names?
Well, usually we talk about where we are from. But instead of just saying, "I'm from Spain" or "I'm from Japan," it's much more natural to add one small detail. It keeps the conversation moving.
That's a great tip. So, instead of saying, I'm from New York, I could say, I'm from New York, but I've lived here in London for about 3 years now.
Precisely. You gave the where and the how long. It gives me, the listener, a chance to ask, "Oh, do you like London more than New York?" Or, "Why did you move?"
Right. It opens a door. I noticed you used the present perfect there. I have lived. That's a common tense we use when talking about our history and how it connects to now, isn't it?
It is. I have lived here for, or I have been working as a. These are perfect phrases for giving a quick background.
What about the word originally? I hear people use that a lot.
That's a power word for learners. You can say, "I'm originally from Brazil, but I grew up in Italy." It explains your journey very clearly.
I like that. It sounds very fluent. And it's much more interesting than a one-word answer. I think sometimes learners are afraid of making mistakes, so they keep their answers very short. But short answers can actually make the conversation feel a bit cold.
I agree. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, adding that extra bit of information shows that you want to talk. It makes the other person feel more comfortable, too.
So we've got the name, the location, and a little bit of history. What's next on our map?
Well, Nick, after we establish where we are from, the conversation naturally flows into what we do with our time. In English, the most common way we ask this is, "What do you do?"
Right. And it's funny because beginners sometimes think that means, what are you doing right now? But it actually means, what is your job, or how do you spend your days?
Exactly. It's a question about your general life. Now, for many people, work is a big part of their identity. When you answer this, you can use the simple present. "I work as a teacher," or "I am a graphic designer."
I noticed you used the word as. That's a small but important word, right? We say, I work as a, followed by the job title.
Good catch. You can also say, "I'm in," if you want to talk about the general field. For example, "I'm in marketing," or "I'm in sales." It's a bit more relaxed than giving a specific job title.
That's very useful. But what if someone isn't working? Maybe they are a student, or they are between jobs. I think some learners feel a bit embarrassed if they don't have a big professional title to share.
They shouldn't be. Conversation is about connection, not an interview. If you're a student, you can say, "I'm currently studying engineering," or "I'm taking a break to travel and improve my English."
Currently is a great word to use there. It shows that this is what is happening in your life right now. It sounds very natural.
It does. And remember, you don't have to talk only about work. In fact, in many cultures, and even in casual English conversations, it's nice to pivot to your passions. You can say, I work in a bank, but in my free time, I'm really into photography.
I'm really into. I love that phrase. It sounds so much more natural than just saying, my hobby is photography.
I agree. I'm into, or I'm a big fan of, makes you sound like a native speaker. It shows enthusiasm. When you talk about your hobbies, your face lights up and the conversation becomes much more energetic.
It's true. If I say, I like football, it's okay. But if I say, I'm a huge football fan, I never miss a match, it gives the other person so much more to talk about. They might say, oh, me too. Which team do you support?
That's the secret to a good conversation. You give a little bit of information and then you throw the ball back to the other person.
Throw the ball. That's a nice metaphor. You mean asking a question back?
Precisely. After you talk about your work or your hobbies, you can simply ask, how about you? Or, are you into photography as well?
So it's a cycle. You answer the question, add a little detail to make it interesting, and then ask a question to keep the flow going.
You've got it. But sometimes, when we talk about ourselves, we need to describe our personality too. Not just what we do, but who we are.
That's where adjectives come in, right? Adjectives can be tricky, Rachel. I think sometimes we tend to use the same basic words over and over, like nice or good. But those don't really tell people much about who we are.
You're absolutely right. If I say, I'm a nice person, it's a bit boring, isn't it? To really talk about yourself effectively, you need words that paint a clearer picture. For example, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Those are great words for English learners to know. An extrovert is someone who gets energy from being around people, right? While an introvert might prefer a quiet night with a book.
Exactly. So you could say, I'm a bit of an introvert, so I usually prefer small gatherings over big parties. Do you see how that explains a preference and a personality trait at the same time?
I do. It feels very honest. What if someone is very active and likes to get things done?
You could use the word ambitious or driven. Or if you want to sound a bit more casual, you could say you are a go-getter. That's a common idiom for someone who is very motivated.
Go-getter. I like that one. On the other side, if someone is very calm and doesn't get stressed easily, they might say they are easygoing.
Easygoing is one of my favorite adjectives to teach. It's very positive. People love being around easygoing people because they are relaxed and flexible.
It's also important to know how to soften these descriptions. Sometimes saying, I am lazy sounds a bit too strong or negative.
Good point. In English, we often use softeners like a bit or at times. So instead of I am lazy, you could say, I can be a bit lazy on the weekends. It sounds much more natural and less like a harsh self-criticism.
That makes a big difference. It sounds more like a human conversation and less like a list of facts. Another word I hear a lot is reliable.
Yes, being reliable means people can trust you. I'm a reliable person. If I say I'll be there, I'll be there. That's a great thing to say in a professional setting or even when making new friends.
So we have words for how we interact with others, like outgoing or reserved, and words for how we work, like organized or creative.
And don't forget adventurous. If you love trying new food or traveling to new places, that's a fantastic word to describe yourself. It tells a story about your lifestyle.
It really does. But you know what else helps people understand who we are? Talking about our family and our daily routines. It gives a sense of our everyday life.
I agree. Your personality often shows through the things you do every day and the people you spend your time with.
You know, Rachel, family is such a universal topic. Most people, when they're getting to know you, will ask if you have siblings or where your family lives.
Definitely. It's a very warm topic. But for learners, the vocabulary can sometimes get a bit confusing beyond the basics of mother and father.
Right. For example, if I have a brother and a sister, I can just say I have 2 siblings. It's a very useful word because it covers both genders at once.
Exactly. And what if you are the only child? You simply say, I'm an only child. People often follow that up by asking if you're close with your extended family, like your aunts, uncles, and cousins.
I like using the phrase close-knit, like, I come from a very close-knit family. It means we spend a lot of time together and support each other. It's a very descriptive way to talk about your background.
That's a beautiful expression. On the other hand, if your family lives far away, you might say, my family is spread out. Maybe some live in Europe and others in South America. It explains why you might travel a lot during the holidays.
That makes sense. Now, once you've mentioned your family, the conversation often shifts to the here and now, your daily routine. People might ask, so what's a typical day like for you?
This is where we use the present simple tense again. I wake up at 7, I have coffee, I go to the gym. But to make it sound more like a natural conversation and less like a list, we use sequence words.
You mean words like first, then, after that, and finally?
Exactly. For example, well, I usually start my day with a quick workout. After that, I head to the office. Then, in the evening, I like to wind down by watching a show or reading.
Wind down. That's a great phrasal verb. It means to relax after being busy, right?
Yes, it's much more conversational than just saying, I relax. Another good one is to head to, which just means to go to. Instead of I go to work, saying I head to work sounds very natural.
I also find that talking about your routine helps people find common ground. If I say, I'm an early bird, I love the mornings, and you say, oh, I'm the opposite, I'm a total night owl, we suddenly have a fun comparison to talk about.
I love those terms, early bird and night owl. They are so visual. Using these kinds of idioms makes your English sound much more colorful and less like a textbook.
It's all about adding those little flavor words. Even talking about your commute, the journey to work, can be interesting. I spend about 40 minutes on the train, so I usually listen to podcasts like this one.
That's a perfect example. It shows you are proactive with your time. So, we've covered where you're from, what you do, who you are, and your daily life. But what about the future?
Ah, dreams and goals. That's a big one. People always want to know what's next. Talking about the future can be a little intimidating, Rachel. I think people sometimes worry that they need to have a massive, life-changing plan to talk about their goals.
I agree, but it doesn't have to be that way. In English, when we talk about the future in a conversation, we use different structures depending on how certain we are. For example, if you have a solid plan, you can use I am going to.
Right, like, I'm going to start a master's degree next year, or I'm going to visit my family in July. Those are definite plans.
Exactly. But if it's more of a dream or a general desire, we often use I'd like to or I hope to. For instance, I'd like to travel around Southeast Asia one day, or I hope to become fluent in English by the end of the year.
I hope to sounds very positive. It shows you have an ambition. Another phrase I hear a lot is, I'm looking forward to.
Oh, that's a classic. It's used to talk about something in the future that makes you feel happy or excited. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Or, I'm looking forward to starting my new job. Just remember, after looking forward to, we use the ing form of the verb.
Ah, good grammar tip. So it's, I'm looking forward to meeting you, not, I'm looking forward to meet you.
Spot on. It's a very common mistake, but getting it right makes you sound very advanced. Now, what about career goals? In many cultures, talking about your professional future is a big part of introducing yourself.
True. You might say, in the long run, I want to manage my own team, or I'm working towards a promotion. The phrase, in the long run, is great because it refers to the distant future, not just next week.
I like that. And for our learners, Many of them have the goal of using English for their careers. They could say, I'm focusing on my communication skills right now so I can work in an international company.
That's a very clear goal. It shows purpose. But we should also mention that it's okay to be a bit uncertain. You can say, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm considering moving to a bigger city.
I'm considering is much better than I don't know. It shows you are thinking and exploring options. It keeps the conversation active.
So we've looked at the past, the present, and the future. We've built a pretty complete picture of a person. But there's one last thing: how to wrap it all up.
You're right. Knowing how to end your introduction is just as important as knowing how to start it. You don't want the conversation to just stop.
It's like landing a plane. You want it to be smooth.
Exactly, Nick. Landing the plane is a great way to put it. You've shared all this wonderful information about your home, your job, your personality, and your dreams. Now, you need to hand the conversation back to the other person smoothly.
A common way I see conversations end awkwardly is when one person finishes a long story about themselves and then there's just silence. It feels like a dead end.
It does. To avoid that, you can use what I call a bridge phrase. This connects your story back to the person you are talking to. For example, if you just finished talking about your goal to learn English, you could say, "But enough about me. What's your biggest goal for this year?"
But enough about me. That's such a useful, friendly phrase. It shows that you're polite and interested in the other person, not just yourself.
It really is. Another way to do it is to find a specific connection. If you mentioned you like hiking, you could end with, I actually went to the mountains last weekend. Do you enjoy being outdoors, or are you more of a city person?
That's perfect because it asks a this or that question. Those are so much easier for people to answer than broad questions like, what do you think?
Definitely. It guides the listener. And remember, everyone, talking about yourself isn't about being perfect. It's about being authentic. If you forget a word, just describe it. If you say, the person who fixes cars instead of mechanic, people will still understand you.
That's a great point. The goal is communication, not a grammar test. Most people are just happy to get to know you. They aren't counting your mistakes.
Precisely. So, to recap our map for today, start with your name and a small detail about where you're from, mention what you do and what you're into, share a bit of your personality or routine, look toward the future, and always, always ask a question back.
It sounds so much more manageable when you break it down like that. I feel like I could talk to anyone now.
I think our listeners can too. Practice makes perfect, so maybe try writing down your own template based on what we talked about today. Read it out loud until it feels natural.
Great idea. Well, Rachel, I think we've covered a lot today. It's been a pleasure as always.
Same here, Nick. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. We hope you feel a bit more confident the next time someone asks, so tell me about yourself.
See you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.